Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Freshly Pressed. Today we have with us Caleb Palmquist. How are you doing, Caleb?
I'm great.
Did I pronounce your name correctly?
Yep, you got it.
Cool. Welcome to the show, and tell us a bit about yourself. A bit about your background, how you got into comics in the first place.
Sure. Yeah. I've been writing comics for about 8 years. And I I come from like a sort of a film background. I originally went to film school. And then I decided I would like to just be a writer. Um, and then eventually that morphed into um, writing comics, and it kind of came full circle for me because when I was a kid, I wanted to be a cartoonist. Like I wanted to write the Sunday morning cartoons in the newspaper, So
Yep. Nice. That's amazing. Did you read a lot of comics while growing up, or did you read them later in life? And there are all sorts of people.
yeah, when I was a kid, I kind of read what I could get my hands on. When you're a kid, it's kind of like whatever random, like issue 23 of Ultimate X-Men or whatever, and then you read 100 times. It was kind of like that for me.
Hmm.
I really liked X-Men and Spider-Man as a kid. Um,
Nice.
that's a lot of what I was reading. And then um, when I got into college, I started reading, I branched out from that, and I think it was probably Brian K. Vaughan's Why the Last Man is the first book that I read where I was like, I could do
Hmm.
something like this. I could write comics.
Hmm. That's amazing. There's been obviously a great shift in comics since obviously there has always been stories in comics. Like EC Comics is very different, has been always been very different. They have been writing stories as opposed to superheroes and things like that. So but more recently there's been a huge shift in comics, and people are writing genre stories. You know
Yeah.
so did that interest you a lot when you were getting into this?
Writing genre stories? Yeah, totally. I mean, I think the cool thing about, independent comics especially, and just any kind of independent art form is that, you can kind of tell the stories that you want to tell, whatever sort of crazy things. I mean, the first comic that I made that really got me any attention, that was
Mm,
successful by any metric, was called Unicorn Vampire Hunter.
right.
And that was just like sort of a wacky idea that I had a long time ago. And um, I think just we live in a time where whatever kind of crazy idea that you have, you can make happen. So
Yes, absolutely. That sounds like a pretty crazy idea, unicorn vampire hunter. So, did you end up, creating the whole thing? Like, is it like
oh
an
yeah,
issue
so
or a series?
Unicorn Vampire Hunter is still ongoing. Right now, the seventh issue is being drawn, um, and I plan to keep that going for a while. And yes, that's been one of my more successful
Mm,
projects. Or I recently did a hardback edition. I've got one here that's pretty cool. Um,
wow,
and
fantastic.
so yeah, you know, it's always cool when something that's just kind of a wild and crazy idea that you have ends up actually being something that other people like and want to read.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure a lot of people might have gone, "Oh, this sounds an awful lot like an idea I thought about it." you know. So yeah,
Yeah, I mean that's kind of the thing is that if you don't do it, somebody else will, right?
yeah,
So that's kind of
yeah,
the same thing with Dragon Grit, which is the one I've got going now. Is like, well, it's about cowboys that ride dragons, and if that's been done, I haven't heard about it, and so um, it's like, well, um, I got to seize the opportunity and do it.
absolutely,
Yep.
absolutely. Good segue. Tell us a bit about Dragon Grid and what's the backstory? What's without obviously spoiling, spoiling it. Tell us a bit about the comic and the campaign.
Sure, yeah. So Dragon Grit is a fantasy western comic book that's set in a world where instead of horses, people ride dragons. The main character is Vera. She is an ex outlaw who is trying to make a living, make a straight living, delivering packages along what's called star routes, basically delivering valuable packages to dangerous places that other people aren't willing to deliver to. Unfortunately, the world is changing. The railroads are coming in, and her services are sort of no longer needed. And so she has to get creative about how she's going to make a living, and ends up taking an escort job. A young man inherits his father's estate, and he doesn't really know how to survive in the West, but he's got this ailing older dragon that keeps
Mm,
wandering off, and he doesn't know what to do, and he offers to pay Vera to help him. And it turns out that this dragon is trying to make its way back to its dragon graveyard, sort of like elephants have an elephant graveyard. And
yeah.
so they have to make their way on foot across the wilderness, which is quite dangerous. And then they're being pursued by an old rival of Vera's, um, who's an outlaw and the leader of a gang. Um, and so it's a Western travelogue story, but it also has a lot of fantasy elements. So if you like stories like 310 to Yuma or True Grit, which are kind of about these journeys across the West, um,
Mm,
and you also like dragons, hopefully this will appeal to you.
that's amazing. Yeah, I think I read the preview and I was like, yeah, this looks like True Grit meets How to Train Your Dragon.
Thank you.
Yeah, fantastic. It's a great premise. I think it's mm, uh, I don't know. There's obviously there's a lot of love for dragon books out there, and this is something unique. I've never seen anything like this before. So kudos to you. So yeah, tell us a bit about the campaign and what are the reward tiers and things like that.
Sure. So on the book, obviously this is a first issue of a new series. So we have the digital edition, and you can get the we have a standard edition, and then we have a collector's edition. So what the collector's edition is it's the same as the standard edition, except it's got a foil stamped logo, and then it will also have limited edition foil numbering at the bottom. And we're only going to print enough to fulfill the orders on the campaign, and then the backer kit after the campaign. So the version that will be available on my website and at cons and all that kind of stuff later on will only be the standard edition. So that's
Right.
just kind of to reward people for supporting early on. And then we also have a variant cover that's it's been illustrated by David Hahn, Carl Kiesel, and Ryan Cody, who are like both all three of them have worked in the industry for a long time, and also they are the creators of a comic book that's very successful on Kickstarter called Impossible Jones. So it
Mm,
was really cool to get them to do this variant cover, and then we have extra goodies, like we have this sticker and an art print. Um, so, and then of course, if you're backing this and you haven't, you're not familiar with my work, you can get all of my previous books. So I wrote Unicorn Vampire Hunter, which is a graphic novel of another graphic novel called Vampire Detective in Space. And then I actually collaborated with the same artist, Kay Woolheiser, from this book on a graphic novel called The Knight and the Lion, which is an Arthurian story about a knight who befriends a lion and they go on adventures together. It's something I'm very proud of. So yeah, there's like a bunch of different stuff you can get um,
Mm.
on the book. I mean, on the.
This is a stunning variant cover. It's beautiful. It's
Thank
written
you.
really well. Yeah. Obviously, I've gone through the preview pages. Some of them are there in the campaign as well. There seems to be mistaken. You let uh,
Yeah.
is that a style that you
Yes.
have adopted over the years? Tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, so I would say the preview pages on this campaign are a pretty extreme example of that because it's like a chase scene and a fight scene. Normally, I have more dialogue than that, but I'd like to think that I'm known for very like minimal dialogue, and because I do think comics are a visual medium, and I do want the pictures to tell the story. So my policy when I'm writing is always to write less dialogue, like the least amount of dialogue that I can do. And it depends on the characters too. I mean, sometimes you have characters who talk a lot. And Vera, in this case, the main character of this book, I mean, she's sort of modeled after Clint Eastwood. And she doesn't talk a lot. She's very, when it's like she doesn't talk a lot. And when she speaks, it's important. So, so that's kind of something we were going for. But yeah, I like to have less happen in comics,
Mm,
and
mm,
have really get into the imagery of it. And so,
yeah.
um, you know, um, in some ways that means that my comics are sort of easy to read, and and you can get through them quickly. Um, but I'd like to think that they're very comprehensible, that the action is really clear and exciting.
Mm,
So
yeah. Yeah. I think what a lot of comic writers do underestimate is that you still have to design those panels. You still have to design the scenes. You still have to do a lot. Like dialogue is just not the only thing that you have to write.
yeah,
I remember reading this thing about Bernard Krigstein, who when he wrote the Master Race, he drew the Master Race. He was like, I think like he had a lot of the editor wanted a lot of heavy dialogue in some of those pages, and he basically kept chipping away at like removing dialogue, and he was like, this actually works better with less. And at the end they were like, I think there were pages with absolutely no dialogue, and so
yeah.
it turns out it's one of the best comics ever made. So yeah.
I think for me, my the thing that I sometimes see in comics is that a lot is happening, and we're expected to follow along with what's happening when there's like multiple actions being represented by a single panel, and I just really like to slow down and get and dig in so that you can really like feel what's happening on the page, and you know the last thing I want is for someone to be reading one of my comics and say, like, I don't understand what's happening here. Like, I don't understand how we got from here to there. Um,
Mm,
and so, like I said, it's less is more is my policy.
nice. I think it also gives the readers a bit of a chance to immerse in the world, because I think
Mhm.
that's what artwork helps, right? Helps you really get a feel of what the world is like. So yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. What's your usual writing? Um, how would I put it? How do you plan the issues? Do you like write an entire story arc and then break it down, or do you write issue by issue? What's your process
I
like?
definitely outline the whole story before I begin. At least when I'm on my game, I do. I have not always done that, but I feel like my best writing comes when I have outlined. So I actually, this book I actually wrote with my wife. This is the first time thing for us. She is a novelist, and so this is the first time she's writing a comic. But we wrote this together, and we wrote out the entire storyline. Um, and so not every issue is like this. The scripts aren't completely done because we weren't sure before we launched like necessarily how well received it would be. And
Mm,
we had either a 5 issue plan or a 10 issue plan. because it's being very well received. We actually broke a record for our day one in terms of how many backers I've gotten on a first
Wow.
day. And so, we have this 10 issue plan and a whole story. And that is typically how I work, unless it's like a one shot, because I've written some one off stories, but usually if it's something that's going to be 4 or 5 issues or longer, I have a plan. I
Mm.
have an outline for the whole thing because I want to see like where the characters are going and how I can plant the seeds for that um, early on. So it's like
Yeah.
it feels like there's a payoff. And I think that if you write one issue at a time, um, then you're really depriving yourself of the opportunity to have like a more layered, deep storytelling.
That's fantastic. Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. That's amazing. Cool. How many issues do you have planned for Dragon
10,
Crit?
10
10. Oh
issues. And
my god.
it's 10 issues and done, which I know is very ambitious. I have yet to have 10 issues of anything yet, but I will say that Unicorn Vampire Hunter is going strong at 7 issues. And so I feel confident that we can make this happen. And also, we have a dedicated art team who we're almost done with issue one on the art. It will be done before the end of the campaign. And then we plan to be on Kickstarter hopefully 4 times a year with this series. We're going to keep coming back
Wow.
and delivering it as quickly as we can because we have a plan. We have a dedicated artist, and we're just going to keep charging ahead with it.
That's amazing. I think that's fantastic to know. And look, I mean, if you have a story to tell, you have a story to tell. Doesn't matter if it's 6 issues or 10 issues or 20 issues. So some books go way beyond that.
Oh
So,
yeah, no, for sure. I think the longest series that I know of on Kickstarter that's still going is Miskatonic High by Mike Shea,
mm,
which I think is in the 20s now, and he's just so consistent. He just keeps showing up, and I really respect that, and that's definitely something I'm trying to emulate. I think it's difficult to get that high, but if you have a story that people are connecting to and they like, then they'll keep coming back.
mm, that's very, very true. No, that's true. Awesome. I usually love to ask this. It's a little bit of a segue from what we have been talking about. Uh, but what are the top five pop culture things that you like?
Top five pop culture things that I like. Well, I'm like any other person. I read and I watch a lot of movies and TV and stuff. So uh, I'm a big Star Wars guy. I would say
Mm, mm,
Star Wars occupies like a lot of my brain space. Maybe an unhealthy amount. Um, and so I would say Star Wars is a big one, and then this is very cliche, but I'm also a big Marvel fanboy. Um,
mm,
uh, that's something that I really enjoy. And then um, I would say that I read a lot, and so
mm.
one thing that I actually like, like a guilty pleasure of mine, is celebrity autobiographies. I
Ah,
recently read the Arnold Schwarzenegger book that he put out,
mm.
and I'm just a sucker for that kind of thing. I read the Prince Harry one, um, and and so I listen to those while I'm working out or doing like doing the dishes, um,
Mm,
and that's only three things. Uh, five things I would say. Um, you know that That's a good question. I'm a big consumer of pop culture, so um,
mm.
like everybody is. Not
Yeah, yeah,
everybody, but a lot of people are. Um,
yeah.
and
I mean, you write screenplays, so maybe are you into like movies and
Oh
stuff? A lot
yeah.
of movies.
I haven't seen Dune yet, the new Dune, but I'm going actually on Monday. I'm going with my brother. I'm super excited about that. I wanted to
Nice.
wait until there was no threat of the Dune popcorn bucket anymore. Like those. I assume those are all sold out. I was like,
Yeah.
I don't feel safe around those. Um, so yeah, no, I'm a big fan of going to the movies. And so Yeah, definitely movies. And
Yeah,
but I would say to kind of bring it back full circle, my favorite movie of all time really is Tombstone. Um,
nice.
it's a Western movie. And I'm
Mm,
definitely a sucker for Western movies. So
that's amazing. That's amazing. Have you seen? I know, like I'm just throwing this out of random, and since you have done mishmash of genres, there's a fantastic Western horror I saw a while back called Bone Tomahawk. Have you seen that?
I have not seen that.
It is fantastic. I should not spoil it for you, but it
Okay.
is one of those movies that they show that it's one kind of movie, but it's really another kind of film.
Okay.
It's set in a western, but it is really a hardcore horror film, and it's done so well. Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
you must definitely check it out. Yeah,
Sweet.
if you're a sucker for western, that's definitely a good movie to check out.
All right.
Awesome. Cool. Coming back to the campaign, do you have any stretch goals planned? Do you have you done any reveals just yet?
Yeah, I have stretch goals. There's, I think, on the yeah, there it is. So if we hit $8,000, which we're closing in on, we're about to hit $7,000. So um, we're going to record an audio commentary, just kind of talking about the book, how we came up with it, how we work together, and our future plans for the book. And then at $12,000, we're going to do a trading card. I've done trading cards for a lot of my previous campaigns. I have like a whole collection of different trading cards, and I think it would be
Mm,
cool to do one for this one. And then for $16,000, we have um, we're going to add some bonus content to the book, just some extra pages of concept art and stuff like that to the back of the book. Um, so I know people always like that. And if we get close on those, maybe we'll consider adding some more. But if we hit, I mean, even if we hit 12,000, that'll be a fantastic success as far as I'm concerned for a first issue of a book. Um, so yeah, that's kind of what. Honestly, we didn't announce the stretch goals right away because I wasn't expecting us to fund on day one. But then we did, so I was like, oh man, I better get these up. So
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. No, I think that's everyone does it slightly differently. Some people announce the first stretch goal and then they say we have two more, and then uh,
Hmm.
they announce when they announce the next stretch goal when they reach the first one. Um, but it is what it is. Kickstarter works in mysterious ways.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah, and like it's great that that your story held on its own uh, rather than there's a whole I think there's a whole commentary within the indie comics community about crowdfunding being successful for certain kind of books. you know uh,
Yes, that's
you know
true.
what I'm talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny because actually there were some people who told me like, well, you should actually make the main character young and hot in because you'll have more success that way. And I was like, that's not really the story I'm trying to tell. And we kept it the way it was, and it's been very successful. I mean, it's not making like the kind of money that the books you're talking about make, but it is I think quite successful,
Mm.
and so I feel vindicated, justified in telling the story the way that I wanted to tell it.
It is quite successful actually. Like I've seen a lot of much smaller campaigns struggle to
Oh yeah.
reach their target. So I think it is done really well. After all, like the point of Kickstarter is to get you out there and bringing the book to life. So I think you've sort of achieved that already. So
Oh yeah.
yeah,
Yep.
great work to
Thank
you
you.
and the team. Yeah. For not bending that side just for this to dilute your story in any way,
Right.
yeah, yeah. No, that's fantastic. Yeah. So uh, before we go, we're coming close to time, but before we go, I would love for you to actually take 5 minutes, do a quick pitch, have an elevator pitch of the book, and tell everyone about the campaign. The floor's
Yeah.
yours.
Okay. So, Dragon Grit is a fantasy western about a world where people ride dragons instead of horses. It was written by myself and my wife, Lorelei Jonason. It's illustrated by Kay Woolheiser and lettered by Dave Lentz. Um, it's about a woman named Vera, who's an ex outlaw, who is trying to make a living uh, doing on the straight and narrow, and takes a risky escort job across the wilderness, helping a young man and his dying dragon. And all the while, they're being pursued by a dangerous outlaw gang. So if you like westerns and travelogue stories, and you also like fantasies and dragons, then I think this will be the book for you.
That's fantastic. The art's stunning. I've just read the previews. I haven't read the whole book, but um, it all looks great to me. If you like dragons and if you like westerns, yeah, go for it.
Yep.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, Caleb, for coming on the show, and
Yeah.
all the
Thanks for
best for
having
the
me.
rest of your campaign.